Tell us who you are and what your podcast is about.
Well, thank you. I think that's the best question for us to start with, right? Because it will set the foundation for everything that we talk about kind of going forward relative to the podcast. So I'm Steve Worthy, host of The Worthy Podcast. One of the things that we felt was missing out here in the podcast sphere, if you will, was a show that dealt exclusively with Black and minority listeners as they navigate their leadership journey, because there are so many different aspects to their experience, to their journey that needs to be heard, or that we can help with understanding and guiding them through that leadership process. But the other side of that is that we do want to help organizations. We want to help organizations understand the importance of leadership equity. We want organizations to understand the importance of how can they change the culture within their organizations to help the development of Black and minority leaders. How are they impacting the communities that surround their businesses as well? So we want to make sure that we're tackling this from both sides of the equation, if you will. The biggest aspect when we were discussing the podcast and what we wanted to do, as leaders with a whole bunch of experience, and we talk about that a little bit later, we wanted to make sure that there was something tangible. We didn't want to just be talking heads and just kind of come on the show, whether it's myself or when we have a guest. We wanted to make sure that each listener had something that they can take away at the end of each episode, whether it's something for them or it's something that they can share with their peers, their family, their friends, somebody. It's so important that in this day and age that we make sure that people that they are equipped, that they have something that they can take with them that can help galvanize an idea, that can help inspire them. So it's super important that we provide each listener with something at the end of the episode that they can take away and go after it.
So why should I listen?
So why should you listen to the Worthy Podcast? That's a great question. And, one of the things we always talk about when we discuss leadership is the first phase of that leadership journey. And it is the growth phase, because it's so important, because you are trying to identify your values. You're trying to get planted in something that's going to be your guiding principle that you could look for to be your true north as you continue along the journey. And so we were looking for that. We were trying to figure that out. We looked at so many books, articles, we looked at scripture. We looked at so many things, and everything that we came to just kind of kept coming back to this one quote. And I think it just makes sense for us to use it as our guiding principle as well. And the quote says, "What you do makes a difference. You have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." Once again, what you do makes a difference. You have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And that's just the culmination of who we are and what we want to do, because the Worthy Podcast is truly a conversation with our listeners. We take our 25 years of experience and we discuss it in the context of different topics, but we also tap into the vast experiences of our listeners. And that's why, because we're on this leadership journey together.
What's the format of your show, and when are new episodes released?
So the format of the show and when we release new episodes, let's do the new release episode. So we do a new episode every Tuesday. And so we do weekly episodes. We just think it's just important. There's too much content out there, too many great people to interview. We take it very seriously. So every week, every Tuesday, so set a reminder, 11 a.m., we release our new episodes. From a format standpoint, it's conversational, it's informative, it's action-oriented. We've talked about that, but we know that our episodes are heavily researched and they're structured for easy listener consumption. We have to make sure that we understand that your time is valuable, and we have to make sure that the content that we put out there is something that you can consume and that you're going to be looking forward to every week as well. So curate our guest segment. We focus in on their expertise, right? And when they are on the show, it is about their expertise and what they do and how they can help our listeners. Or I may be solo and just unpacking a vital topic that's, relevant to our listeners.
How can I find the Worthy Podcast?
So how do you find us, right? How do you become part of this community of listeners? Well, you can find us on each and every platform, whether it's on Apple or it's on Android, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or you could pay us a visit at worthyleadershipgroup.com/podcast. So we thank you. We want to thank you for becoming part of this community of listeners. We thank you because we want to make sure that your voice is being heard and that listeners are supporting listeners as we delve into these topics relevant to diversity of thought, leading with courage, and also taking action. So just as a reminder, we release a podcast every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Come join our community, subscribe and download to get the latest episodes. Join in the conversation by leaving us a review with your idea of a topic that's vital to the community of listeners. And lastly, what you do makes a difference. You have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. We, meaning you and I, are The Worthy Podcast. Welcome to the journey.